Good afternoon, members, and a very good afternoon to any residents and members of the press that may be watching us online. My name is Councillor Steve Bartlett. I'm the chairman of the BCP Review and Scrutiny Board, and hopefully I'll be able to manage this meeting in a nice, amicable fashion today. Before further ado, I'll hand over to Jill Hollyoak, our Democratic Services Officer, who will give us some housekeeping notes for the way the meeting will be conducted today. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Chairman. Please note this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Board is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this lies with the Chairman in case of disruption. For those in the room, please note that the fire alarm sounds. If the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the ground floor of the multi-storey car park. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices, including laptops, are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Agenda item 1, apologies. Do you have any apologies, Jill?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Sean Gabriel and Councillor Brian Dion. And item 2, substitute members. Councillor Derek Borthwick is here for Councillor Gabriel, and Councillor Norman Decent is here filling the Conservative group vacancy.
Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do any councillors have any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other interests on any items on the agenda? Nope, thank you. So, agenda item 4 of minutes and action sheet. Members, can you approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of January 2022? Okay. I will just cover some of the action sheets. Let's make sure there's nothing on there that we've missed. Minute number 146, Jill. Item to be added to the board's forward plan on Blade BCP. It has been added to the forward plan, so we can take that off as an action. Agenda item 153, water drainage. We asked the portfolio holder who would write to MPs expressing concerns of the level of combined sewage overflows and the effect of this on bathing water quality. That request was put to Cabinet, and I think the portfolio basically said you didn't need to do it because you've already done it. So I think Councillor Anderson is with us today. Might be worth it. Councillor Anderson, are you there?
Yes, Chairman.
Yeah. Councillor Anderson, I understand that you have already written to MPs expressing concern. If that is the case, would it be appropriate for the board to be advised of the answers that you've received?
I have written to the board members. I'm having a meeting this Friday with several of the MPs. I'm not quite sure how many are attending as yet.
Okay, well, it would just be nice to get some feedback from the board's request, that's all. So if you could keep us abreast of the outcome of that, right. Thank you. Okay, there's just one more. On minute 18162, the chairman followed up on the fly tipping trial to determine that it should be added to the forward plan. I followed up on that, and yes, it should be added to the forward plan. But we'll have to agree a date at some other time, Chair, and I'll discuss this with the Vice Chair, and we'll find a date for it. Thank you. So brings us to agenda item 5, public issues. Jill, are there any public issues?
There are no public issues for this meeting.
Thank you. The agenda item 6, scrutiny of local transport plan capital programme cabinet report. I've received apologies from Councillor Mike Green, portfolio holder, but we're fortunate to have with us this afternoon Julian McLaughlin is the Director of Transport and Engineering, and Good afternoon, Julian, and could I ask you to introduce a report to us? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks for that. Yeah, this is a report on the LTP, the Local Transport Plan Capital Programme for 22-23, next financial year. The total expected funding from government, the Department for Transport, is 7.9 million, and that's split between the capital block, which we usually get, of 3.1 million, and a highway maintenance allocation of 4.8 million, making the 7.9. I just wanted, as introduction, to make members aware of some key points really in terms of this year's programme. The first one is that the funds are to be allocated to Transport Plan, in this case the Local Transport Plan 3, which runs from 2011 to 2026, a 15-year programme. So the allocation from government is provided to ourselves as a council to progress with that programme, which has been through committee, legacy committees and formed. I would stress that there is a refresh of the process. Government put out a lot of policy last year and in terms of sustainable transport, and so we're on a game plan for refresh of LTP4. So a lot of the allocations you'll see in the paper are related to bringing the council into a position where it's able to progress with technical work to the DFT requirements. We've yet to receive the government information and guidance on LTP4. Second point I wanted to make was that the government set the requirements for us, so the format of the appendices that you see are in line with the government's identified position in terms of the strategies that it requires and expects the council to deliver. And the third point is that if we don't comply with the Department for Transport in providing this programme and a lot of other technical work that they require of us in the background, which isn't included in the report in terms of the condition of the network, showing how our financial position is set, an audit process for the Section 151 financial approvals to indicate that we've complied with what the government wish for, and that we're offering value for money in what we actually invest in. So there's an awful lot of constraint on what we can put forward, which is all included in the forthcoming programme. Another point to make is that many of the allocations this coming year, particularly so, are based on already committed commitments that the council's made through Cabinet and to the Department for Transport under other bidding processes. So a lot of the elements in the tables that you see in the programme are actually already approved, and we effectively are reliant upon the funding being allocated in that way so that we can meet our commitments for the future. And really the final point, and probably from a maintenance point of view, is a really important one. It's in the paper. Is that the maintenance process is for a 3-year programme to be published each and every year, and this has been happening since 2016. Otherwise, we are in danger of losing the funding in future years. We have a status as band 3 for maintenance, which is a good position to be in. But if we fall foul of allocating and providing a programme, then we could go down to the lower band, and that puts our financial position in terms of allocations for the future in jeopardy in terms of a reduced government commitment. None of the figures that members have before them today are final figures. And you'll note the caveats throughout the paper, in that the government have not yet released a letter of allocation for us as a council or any other council in the country. We've had promises that they'll be this month and early in March, but last week we did receive an email that said that the indicative figures for maintenance would be in line with the 21-22 allocations. So it puts my mind at rest, and I'd like to reassure members that although we don't have a final document, that that we can accept the monies, but that the position is, as far as we're aware, is that the assumptions we've made in this paper are accurate and are likely to be confirmed by government. But you'll notice one of the recommendations is for, in terms of the report itself, item recommendation C is to allow us, if there is any change in government position, to seek confirmation for myself in consultation with the portfolio holder, Councillor Mike Green, to adjust the allocation slightly if there is a slight difference in the allocation letter that has yet to come. So really, those are the key points in terms of the capital programme, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I also have Bob Askew available, who's our Transport Improvement Manager, who knows a lot of the detail within the allocations themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. So members, Councillor Scrutiny, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The capital programme is as it is, and I'm not going to argue about that. I've just been looking through Appendix B, the maintenance, and it's all structural maintenance. In my area, one of the worst things, and right across Poole, white lines are virtually invisible. Yellow lines are all but disappeared. They've been patched up where patches have been put up, but the rest are gone. No loading and unloading markings haven't been touched for years and years and years. So through the main route from Poole to Bournemouth, through Lower Parks and Commercial Road, on the very tight section, there are no loading, and have been for years and years, no loading, unloading restrictions. And yet at least twice a week, for best part of an hour at a time, the Co-op parks a huge lorry there and carefully unloads it. But you can't see the yellow slashes across the curb. I've asked and asked again, and nowhere in the maintenance can I see any, not a penny, for dealing with white lines, which are crucial, under bridges, hatched lines and so on, to put traffic into the right lane and the right place. White lines are magic to most drivers, and most drivers observe them and take them on board. Can you please tell me where the funding is for keeping our road markings right across the conurbation? I know I've referred to Parkston because that's my patch, but they're not good anywhere. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Scrutiny. Can you answer that, Julian?
Yeah, absolutely. This is about the revenue allocation to the council for improvements and other aspects, as well as the maintenance. There are allocations within the council's own budgets for that, and neighbourhood services run the white lining and everything else in terms of maintaining what is there at the current time. And I would wish to reassure the Councillor Stribley that there is a programme in place for that, and it is funded. I couldn't tell you exactly in terms of the detailed allocations, because that's separate from this LTP pot. So there are funds there that are to maintain the existing network. I would stress that if there are issues locally in a ward by ward basis, as we always say, please do report them. There are issues in terms of having much demand and limited funding, but there are additional elements in terms of potholes and pre-patching that you'll see for neighbourhood services in there, in addition to their allocation within the council's budgets. So there is funding there. It's not shown in these tables.
Thank you.
Councillor Stribley, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Okay, I understand it's not funding in those places. Can I then, to whom we should report? Because I have reported these things endlessly over the last 2 years and not seen any activity whatsoever. So thank you anyway, Julian.
Thank you, Councillor Stribley. Just to put a bit of counter argument on that, whilst I accept everything you say, Councillor Stribley, because in my own ward we had issues for years, but I am delighted to say that recently We've been seeing a lot of the white lines being refreshed, and it's taken a long time to get there. But generally speaking, where they are particularly faded or almost non-existent, they've now started to do it, and it's been great to see it, I have to say. So hopefully we get Julian to come and look at the specific areas. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Councillor Slade, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, historically, when we have this paper come to council in any way, it comes with a list of the upcoming roads that are being treated. And I noticed that certain people were celebrating that they're resurfacing 28 roads in the next however long. But there's no paper on this list that actually tells us what the roads are for 22, 23. If you go on the website, there's a list for 21, 22 that we're only a matter of 3 or 4 weeks away from being out of. When are we going to get the list of roads for 22, 23 so that we can show our residents how it's been allocated? And also, I noticed looking at the website which shows the 21, 22 list, there isn't a consistency around where these roads are. And Councillor Stribley made a comment recently about, I think either planning applications or something, where there are net road names that are the same across, there are 3 Clarendon roads, for example, and the list lists some places, whether it's in Highcliffe or Moordown or wherever, and not others. So can we have a consistent response so that the name of the road brackets which ward it's in would be really useful, so that we actually know, because residents will see a road name and not know where it is.
I think that's one is a request, Julian, the other is a question. Thank you.
Absolutely. The details not in this report. There are, as Councillor will know from the past, there's a set of criteria where we look at the condition of the roads and look at which roads are the highest on those criteria lists, and they're ranked in terms of that. That list will become part and parcel of this process. This is a strategic paper to identify the general allocation between the different elements that DFT require of us. But the detail in terms of road lists will appear on the website. I can give you without delving into great detail, but I do have an initial list. Some work is still going on, but to give you some confidence, the resurfacing programme in terms of 1.6 million, which is the largest allocation on the maintenance, that is we're currently looking at Holdenhurst Road, Malvern Road, Columbia Road, Yarmouth Road, Southbourne Overcliff Drive, Lake Road and Lansdowne Mews as a starter. Obviously there's a limit and we need to do design work and work out the costings, but whatever if these are approved at Cabinet, then we will have a set budget, and we do, as in every year, we do as much as we possibly can with the work. In addition to that, you'll see in the paper that there's a challenge fund schemes, which is significant, but it's not LTP. That's monies that we've won competitively against other authorities as part of the DFT's position in terms of providing additional allocation. And there's 2.2 million there. So we're going to have schemes there on the A35 in Christchurch, on Commercial Road, the A341 Wimborne Road, Ferncroft Road to Northbourne Roundabout. So there's a whole raft of roads as well. And not forgetting that there's actually, along the A35, there's actually other schemes that are not part of this allocation that will improve the area significantly. And we have 20-odd million pounds towards Boscombe, the Towns Fund, which will influence the road network and the provision for parking and other things. And with that comes place shaping as well. So this is by far not a complete set of reports. But to reassure the council, there will be the detail for this specific allocation entered onto the website, and I'm sure that the members will be provided with that detail ahead of it going public.
Thank you, Julian. I think Councillor Say wants to come back on the point.
Yeah, just to clarify then, the 28 list, where did that come from? And will that go back through a democratic process so that we can have some understanding of why those roads have been selected and you know, have some visibility on it? Because you've just listed, and there'll be people listening who will suddenly have pricked up and gone, oh, that might be my road. That's the first time that list is by anybody, and it feels quite odd that the elected representatives of those areas are not the first people to hear that. So that concerns me slightly. The other question I forgot to ask was around, it says in the paper about we're in band 3 and there's an incentive. You've suggested that if we don't publish a rolling list of 3 years on our website, I can't see a rolling list of 3 years. I can only see 21, 22. So surely a rolling list would tell us what we're doing in 22, 23, 23, 24. What happens if we slip to band 4? How much money would we lose? Because that could be significant, particularly if your road didn't quite make it this year and you were hoping for it next year.
Julian?
Yeah, Chair, on that one. Yeah, certainly, and I noticed Bob's raised his hand as well. He may have better detail, but certainly the process is well known in terms of the criteria that we set. As I said, there will be a list of ranked schemes that will be provided as part of this. This is a strategic paper, as I've said, in terms of the allocations of that. In terms of the incentive funding, that's something that government introduced, and I can reassure the member that there's a 20% risk of reduction here if we go down a band, and the incentive fund position, we're in a good place, but we need to keep that there. And as the paper says, and as I've said earlier, band 3 is a requirement for 3 sets of things. There should be appendices that show allocations for the next 3 years in your report. I apologise if they haven't come through to members sitting today, but there is a 22-23 allocation. I have it in front of me, and the 23-24 and another page on 24-25. Government are clear that if we don't provide those in a published form, although I do stress that there is some flexibility here in the initial allocations. Over time that will change, and each year we refresh those. But the allocations are identified as exactly the same total amount for each of the 3 years, and both 23 and 24 and 24-25 are exactly the same allocations at this early period. So hopefully that reassures Councillor Slade.
Ms. Braskew had put your hand up. Did you want to come in?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, and apologies to Julian, the Challenge Fund schemes, I think Julian mentioned the A35 Christchurch. Just for clarification, that's A35 Christchurch Road at Boscombe, not Christchurch Town Centre. So I just wanted to clarify that. And also the missing years Councillor Slade referred to should be in Appendix B, which hopefully the meeting has got access to.
Sorry, I was referring to the detail. You're referring to the requirement to print the figure for 3 years, not the detail 3 years.
Yeah, so basically,
That's
as
fine.
Julie
Thanks
said,
for
it's that
clarifying
higher
that.
level. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you. I'd just like to come back to Councillor Stribley's point, which is it's also an annoyance to me. There are some white lines I've been complaining about for pretty much almost 10 years that are completely non-existent now. And there's no point complaining because nothing gets done. You know, I've got no real confidence that there's a proper system in place for dealing with them. I would have thought there's enough work there for a team to just be constantly going, probably, you know, overnight, but from one situation to another, just painting white lines. And instead, I get the impression that what happens is it goes through some kind of adjudication process and gets thrown in with other things and never gets done because it never reaches the top of the pile. These lines are important, especially for cyclists and pedestrians, and especially now that the highway code's been changed to encourage pedestrians to walk out in front of traffic at junctions. Can you explain the process for how the information that we report is collected and what it ends up in terms of a document in the process? And can we see the document that has a list of all the white lines that have been reported and in process? Thank you.
Julian, is that one for you or is it for you, Bob? Yeah.
Yeah, I can start if Bob wants to add any information. I mean, I think the ONS committee did actually receive presentations on highway maintenance, which went into great detail only last year about the process of assessing the road network, how it's inspected, how the Cat 1, as we call them, the safety issues are identified in terms of potholing and everything else. But also that actually did touch on as a presentation on the white lining process. But for clarification for Councillor, the process is largely dependent upon people actually making it officers aware of the issues. If there is a concern over safety, if white lines have completely disappeared or are felt to be a safety issue. We have an inspection team. When I say we, BCP Council, it's not actually under my remit. It's within the neighbourhood services that go around the network as we must and identify issues with the network. And that does include white lining. We also have a response system from the public can report things if in their road or if they notice something on the network that isn't right. It worries me that you've had lines that haven't been replenished for 10 years, Councillor Howe. And we have a reported system as well that can deal with that. So if people make us aware of those things, the process is that those are obviously ranked. There is only a limited amount of funding and resource each year. And those are ranked based largely on safety issues. So if we are made aware of an issue that hasn't been dealt with, where a line is felt to be unsafe, then please do bring that to the attention of the neighbourhood services team. That they have limited funding, as I say. So,
can I come back, Chair, please?
Yeah. Yes, Councillor Howe.
Yeah. Well, so the problem here, as I suspected, is in the ranking, because in the time it takes for somebody to go to the trouble of ranking an item, a lot of these issues could have been fixed. It's a matter of walking, 10 yards across a junction or to paint you repaint a cycle circle or something like that. And it takes minutes. Admittedly, there's health and safety and you might need to temporarily close the road, which may add an extra 5 or 10 minutes to it. But we're not talking about things that require an awful lot of organisation. And I would have thought a team that is properly, it wouldn't take much resource. You just need a small team of people who understand the health and safety aspects and given a list of things that they need to do. So can you please send me the list so I can see whether the items that I am concerned about are on the list, please?
So I'd need to liaise with the Director for Environment, I'm sure that there's a team that is doing this on a permanent basis and based on a ranked list. And if there is a list that's available and up to date, then I'm sure we can provide that to the council.
Yeah, you said if there is a list. I would have. Is there a list or not? Because if there isn't a list, that might explain why we keep reporting things and they never actually get done. But anyway, I'll leave it at that and wait for the list to be supplied to me. Thank you.
Can I, Councillor Earl, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's actually more of a question. So on Appendix A on the capital programme, it lists bus facilities, and that's quite a broad term. So I was hoping to get a bit more clarification on exactly what that means in terms of local authority funding. Thanks.
Sorry, did you hear the question, Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes, sorry. Is that one, Bob? Can you provide that information? I mean, from my point of view, there's a whole raft of improvements made to bus facilities. In a nutshell, the operators provide the buses based on route by route commercial position. It's been deregulated since 1986, and we provide the infrastructure in order to provide people with a better choice and a safer journey. And that includes for raised curbs, to take on board the adjustments and improvements in bus technology, and so that people can mount and get onto the bus and off the bus safely, as well as a whole series of real-time information, as well as shelters, a whole raft of shelters. And people will have seen the investment that we've made. And a lot of the investment that we do make on bus infrastructure isn't just from this. This is quite a small allocation to keep the programme going, largely for bus shelters across the conurbation. And it does vary tremendously between the different corridors. On the A35, between the three towns of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, obviously there are much more modern shelters that have been put in place as part of an allocation that was identified and bid for. So we won monies for £20 million of investment in the past, where we've provided those shelters. And the patronage increased on those corridors as a result, because people were covered, they weren't in the rain waiting for a bus, they knew what time the bus was coming, and the bus operators put on a higher frequency on those corridors. And that's our aim for the network as a whole. So that allocation is a continuance. We have a programme that is run from within our service that actually goes to the next bus shelters and replaces that and makes sure that the information is for the customers on site. Hopefully that clarifies.
Thank you. Councillor Slade, you wanted to come back?
I just briefly wanted to come back about the list, because over 2 years ago we agreed that we would publish a list on the website, that we would publish the matrix so that the public knew we now know what how we rank. That's been published. What we haven't established is people to be able to know whether their road has made the list. I recall when we had our presentation at the last ONS maybe 6 months ago that somebody said, well, actually that this administration changed the priority and decided it wasn't so important to put that on the website. I accept that, but it seems utterly ridiculous that information is not publicly available to the democratically elected members to be able to see for themselves. If they're roadly, Julian, you will be aware that I would know at any one time if my zebra crossing was number 75 in the list or 275 in the list, so that I knew whether it was something we could. And Councillor Stribley is nodding because we recollect the same system. It was really effective. And I know you're now head of engineering, and probably this isn't quite your thing, but will you please send the message back that it's madness that we can't offer any assurance to our residents to even know, where they sit on that list. So we know it exists. We know the matrix exists. It's just crazy that a simple thing like letting members have a copy of it once a year hasn't been done.
Thank you. Councillor Allison. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Rigby.
Thanks, Chair. Just sticking on to Appendix A and the capital programme, I was just going to ask about the funding aside for the electric vehicle infrastructure. It seems pretty low considering that this is like a lot of the future policies coming out, as is the greener choice for electrical vehicle charging infrastructure. So I was just wondering if there's additional funding on that as well, or what the plans are for that funding, what it's going to entail. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, if I may answer that one to clarify.
Please.
Yeah. That allocation really is to facilitate the progression of that new technology across the network. So it's to allow us to have a fund that is there, a small amount, as you quite rightly highlight, that is not for the major infrastructure that goes in. That will be provided for. We're in talks at the moment with a commercial operator. So the infrastructure will be run largely commercially, and we would and I stress that is actually something that hasn't been signed up to yet. It would be party to decisions of an operational nature probably, but we do have operational providers in place across BCP, and we do have a strategic network. What we are aiming for, and this funding is not for that, is to extend electric chargers for vehicles across the network over the coming years, and that funding would largely be from the commercial market, as well as just to add that there are certain elements in terms of our development management where new development would come in, and we would actually stipulate a requirement in terms of further charges for that new development. It's about providing that choice, providing the infrastructure across the network so that it becomes a normal way of travel.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards.
No, it's okay. Councillor Rigby had the same question as me.
Okay, Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Julian, you mentioned a commercial operator, and I understand that things are being looked at, and wisely so, because there's a lot of amateur players in the EV market and a few good ones. Have we, two questions really, have we considered becoming our own commercial operator so that we get the revenue back into the council, is point one, and there are sources of funding for that. And the second one is there are companies out there that are buying up quite considerable amounts of land or even car parks with certain authorities, and then establishing an EV network which they're prepared to share back the revenue with. Are we looking at anything like that? Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yeah, I can't really say too much, I'm afraid, because the commercial sensitivities of the position, but suffice to say that we are in talks with leading companies, not just leading companies in this country, but across Europe as well. They're well-established companies, and we are looking at that detail. In terms of the commercial comeback and the potential for the council to earn income, certainly that is part and parcel of those discussions. We've yet to form a position with those, and there are a series of talks as well that have been going on over the last 4 or 5 months. But that's the good news, is that we're coming to a position where that we may well be able to commit for the future to extend that network. But yes, absolutely, that there is potential. You're absolutely right, Councillor.
And can I just ask subsequent to that, Julian, is the door still open for approaches on that evaluation? Because there's 1 or 2 companies I know that have developed significantly across Europe, and one in particular that's developing globally.
Yes, I think we've probably already, I'm guessing here, but I won't mention names, but certainly we've had the big players interested in our area, amongst others. So, I mean, if you wanted to take that offline, Councillor, and let me know which company, I can double check that they've actually already been contacted. We're talking big names here, and to reassure that the infrastructure is well tested, well designed, and would move us forward with a step change.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Borthwick.
I see you talk about White Leg Road, and I see you putting some lights in. Can you tell me why the curbs that are installed are such a curved nature that they're suitable for tobogganing instead of people trying to climb up the curbs and get on and off vehicles? And when you compare it with Wallasdown Road, the residents just don't understand why you've got these peculiar curbs, because they're so difficult to use.
Yeah. That's part. I think I caught White Leg Way. Can you confirm? Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, White Leg Way is a TCF project that has recently gone into. It's received quite a lot of interest from people because of the curbing. The curbing that was used there, compared to the other, as Councillor quite rightly indicates, that it varies from all of the other curbing used thus far and into the future for the TCF programme. It's for drainage reasons. That area, White Leg Way, is right close to the bottom of a hill, Saxonhurst, and up the hill there. And it's actually next to a river. So it does frequently flood. It's a high-risk flood area and is identified as such. So the curbing was put in so that with holes through the curbing, so it's raised. So it's slightly higher than that, and that's caused some issues. So that's the reason why. Hopefully that clarifies it, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Scribbley, and this is going to be the last speak on this because I think time is moving on.
Thank you, Chairman. It is on this issue of White Leg Way. I don't use it very often, but I do travel that way on some occasions. But I have personally spoken to 2 emergency vehicle drivers who say it's an absolute danger, and if coming in both ways, emergency vehicles can't get through, hence the traffic trying to move out of the way of the emergency vehicle mounts the curb and is suspended there, seriously damaged, etc. Can we know how soon this is going to be remedied? Because a lower curb will stop quite a level of water and it will allow a car to mount it or go over it safely without serious damage. There are a number of areas in the borough where we're putting in cycleways, and I'm looking at the remainder of the road. If there's one-way traffic, it's fine, any emergency vehicle can get through. If there's two-way traffic, there are a number of places where it's going to be seriously dangerous, and emergency vehicles won't be able to get through unless the traffic already on the road mounts the footpaths or pavements or whatever.
Shall I come back on that one,
Yes,
Chair?
Please, because I'm aware this is a TCF programme.
Yeah.
And this question has already been raised in the public domain many times. It's been in the media. And the consistent answer from TCF is that it adheres to all the various policies, etc., that they're working to. It is an area of interest.
Yeah,
and can add more to it. Thank you.
I'd just like to reassure both the members that have raised this issue as well as the public that are listening that we have got a scheme design there that is compliant with the DFT. So it's been signed off as a scheme design in the first place before it was built. And we have also been consulting in recent months due to the concern from local people with the ambulance and other emergency services. I can reassure you that as far as the services are concerned, rather than individual drivers, they are absolutely happy with that design. They do not feel that it can that it creates a problem for people not to get through, and that people are able to, without mounting the curb, allow for an ambulance to come through on blue lights. So that's the position I'm told. And that's the position with the emergency services formally. We are looking at whether there's any adjustment that can be made, but that takes time with the design team.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. I think we've come to the end of it on it. There are a couple of issues I think that are worth taking forward in some way. The first is the access to information either to residents or to ward councillors about the degree of work that's likely to be occurring in their particular areas. We already get this with service works. You can look at it online, and indeed councillors do get prior notification as well individually to each ward when works are about to happen in their ward areas. So one would imagine it would be just another step to take that forward to give a bit more information about roadworks or maintenance works or line painting, whatever, in a particular area. So what I think I'll do is take an action to write to the portfolio holder on this issue to see if anything can be done to improve the information flow to either residents or to ward councillors. The second issue, I think, and I think it's fair, and Julian, you've mentioned that you are sort of looking at the issues around White Lake Way. Again, this has been a matter of significant public interest, and I will take an action to write to portfolio holder concerns that expressed by members here, and ask what issues are being looked at to potentially to address the concerns that residents have, and members of this board have. Sorry. Oh, just a moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to say that I find One Network quite handy in looking up. You can look in advance with quite a few sort of roadworks on that.
Okay, thank you. So, sorry.
I just wanted to suggest that perhaps you could ask Democratic Services if they could follow up on the request for the documents, because I think that's separate from the information. We want an ongoing information stream, but there was a request today both for the list of white lines, if that exists in the document, or if it is in the general document that includes other things that need to be done on a road by road basis, that document. So maybe we are looking for requesting two documents or one document, but you know, if Democratic Services could follow that up and circulate it to all councillors on the committee, I think that would be useful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, the list will be constantly changing, but maybe I could also roll that into the same request that I put to the portfolio holder for them to make a decision on that.
But I think we are, as I understand it, we as members of this committee are allowed to have that information independent of asking the portfolio holder. So just the interest of just speeding things up a little bit.
Sure, it'd be interesting to see this if indeed it does exist in that way. But it may not. So that may be the answer. Okay. Sorry, hang on a minute.
All right. I didn't get an answer to my earlier question as to whom do we report these issues?
The question, did you get that question? Although I'm aware that reporting these issues is freely available on the council internet site, but I've done it myself many times. So,
I expect, Chairman, many of us feel if reported on the internet site and nothing happens, you never get an answer. If we have an officer's name to go to, at least we generally get a response.
I do disagree with you, Councillor, because I always get a response on these issues. Thank you. So we've got a couple of actions there and a request for Democratic Services to obtain the list and circulate to the members of this committee as well. Okay. So if there's no more on this, I think we'll close this particular debate down. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, Mr. McLaughlin, and you as well, Bob Askew. And hope we didn't give you too difficult a time, but clearly there's a range of issues where members are really interested, as I'm sure residents are as well. But thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, members, we'll move on to agenda item 7, scrutiny of the development of the Through Nature Park Hicks Sang Cabinet Report. And we have Councillor Mark Anderson, portfolio holder for the Environment and Place, to introduce the paper to us. So, without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Basically, this is a report that is asking Cabinet to confirm the allocation of funds for the previously agreed and planning approved Hicks Farm, which is now the Throop Nature Park. The money is divided into three areas. The 518,000, which we will be asking for from Heath and Mitigation, which I believe has already been agreed with Natural England. The £100,000 to cover those aspects for the nature park that Natural England considered were not part of the Heath and Mitigation, and another £100,000 for the annual maintenance and running costs. The £100,000 for the additional resources can broadly be divided into three areas, which are electric car charging infrastructure, which is a condition applied for all by the car parking SPD. Ecological enhancements, which we as Environment think are an enhancement and a necessary addition to this SANG. And we have some extra money, which is where we just want to improve the car park, which is one of the conditions that was objected to in the first planning application on this site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I hope that my members, I'm going to start the questions off on this one, and then I'll come to Councillor Kelsey. The first question I've got is that, throughout the documentation, we're constantly referred to as the Throop Nature Park. And actually, there is no planning consent for a Throop Nature Park. The planning consent is for a SANG, which is a different thing. Throughout the Equality Impact Assessment report, for example, it goes on about this Throop Nature Park. Can you explain to us what the difference is and why you believe it's appropriate to be calling the SANG a nature park? Thank you.
Chairman, I will ask Martin Whitchurch, who's the head of open spaces, if he'd like to come back on this, as it's I think probably more appropriate if Martin answers this one.
Sorry, Martin Whitchurch, is it, the project leader? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Anderson. So hello, everybody. Martin Whitchurch, I'm Strategic Lead for Green Space and Conservation. I think it's just kind of just a change in title, really. So for a lot of the members of the public, a SANG doesn't really mean anything as an acronym. And what we wanted to do is place the SANG as in a sort of a different light, I suppose, rather than just a more functional term. And kind of reflected what we hope it will be, as that will be a Throop Nature Park. So in other places around BCP, we have nature parks. So Halls Bay Nature Park was kind of named a few years ago, and I appreciate there's a difference in what they do and what the sites actually are. But we felt that placing it as a nature park gives it a different emphasis, and hopefully kind of lets people enjoy it for what that is, as a riverside SANG, delivering the SANG purposes and everything that it needs to meet in terms of the planning terminology. But for the public, hopefully it kind of just references it as something a bit softer and nicer that they can understand and hopefully use for kind of its full benefits, really.
I think that the opposite effects will result from our residents, who will have much more concern about the use of the word nature park. It conjures up completely different thoughts in people's heads as to what a SANG actually is. And all the other SANGs are called SANGs, so they're not called nature parks. The nature park is an aspiration only. There are no planning consents for a nature park. And so I think it's wholly inappropriate for this to be called as such. Councillor Kelsey.
A SANG is a SANG, Chairman, as far as I'm concerned. And that's what it should be called. That's what we voted for at planning at the end of the day. That's not my questions. My questions is financial. And I would like some explanations, please, with regarding the additional 100,000 from SIL for the resources element of the implementation, which can't be funded using Heathlands, why that is and what they are. And I'd also like to know why they are asking for an extra 100,000 from SIL again every year. My understanding of SIL was that it should not incur further costs. Now, if we're given this 100k a year, that means other items are going to miss out on funding. So I'd like to know why they want 100k a year. That's probably for the officers to answer.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. I'll put this to Councillor Anderson to start with. You may wish to delegate this to the officer. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. As I said in my introduction, the 100k that has not been covered by the Heathlands mitigation was for electric car charging infrastructure, which is a planning condition from the car parking SPD, and ecological enhancements, which come out of the environment department. So that's my department, and we're putting up asking for extra money for that. But that is quite a small amount of money. It's 18,000 as opposed to the 60,000 for the electric car charging. And then we are looking for timber surrounds to the height barriers and making it more sympathetic to the conservation area for the car park entrance. So that's what the extra money is for. The 100k I will pass over to Martin so he can give you a detailed breakdown on that. Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, the £100,000 per annum is maintenance cost. So that is also to be requested out of heath and mitigation funding. Appreciating the recommendations in the report, it does say 100,000 of sill resources per year. The heath and mitigation falls within the sill resources. So that is the cost of maintaining and managing the SANG in perpetuity 80 years. So that includes the cost of a warden for gate locking and opening, vegetation management, and a whole range of other ecological surveys and other things that are required as a provision of the SANG, as required by the planning decision, but also the actual heath and mitigation use of funds as well. So we've got a full cost schedule for maintenance over the 80 years beyond the initial construction period and kind of establishment period, broken down by kind of activity and by split out over each year.
Did that answer your question, Councillor Kelsey? Thank you. Councillor Scribley.
Councillor Kelsey and I think, are on the same wavelength, because mine was the financial question too. We're talking about an initial cost of £618,000 for a SANG, which is meant to be a natural area. I know 100,000 of it is for your fencing and your electric charging places for cars, but that works out at almost 21,000 an acre over the 30 acres, which is a huge amount. I mean, you know, I could have a landscape garden for that sort of money. Plus, pardon? I did have, not now. Sorry. And then 100k inflation proofed for the next 80 years. Goodness knows what that's going to cost. That's fine and aspirational, but I would want an assurance that other parks across the conurbation are not short-changed by this. I mean, we're told at Whitecliff that we can't prevent trees being cut down and poisoned because there's no money to put up a CCTV camera, and nobody can afford 40,000 for something. And yet we have this astronomical sum of money elsewhere. And I'm not saying one should take precedent over the other, absolutely not. But we have parks right across the conurbation from east to west, and they all need equal care and protection. And I thought SANGs actually needed less because they were meant to be left for nature rather than monitored and cared for. So I'm just not comfortable about the sum of money set aside, and can I have an assurance that no other park is being deprived because of this expenditure on this particular one? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Chairman. The other parks are not being funded out of heath and mitigation funding. This is a separate pot of money that is taken from developers and is top sliced, as you were aware, that started in 2007 when the European Habitats Regulation was brought in. So I think that, and to my recollection, there have been some quite large amounts of money spent on parks across the whole of the southeast area of Dorset. I don't want to mention any in particular, but I'm sure several of those were in Poole. But I'll hand over to Mr. Whitchurch if he can explain a little more.
Thank you, Mr. Whitchurch.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Yeah, and I completely agree with Councillor Stribley's points. I think, yeah, I'd be the first to advocate for increased or fair resourcing for parks and open spaces. I think the point is that this funding that we're requesting is by large coming from heathland mitigation funds. And one of the principal points of use of those funds is to mitigate development, in this case in the town centre in Bournemouth, and the creation of this SANG is helping to sort of bring forward that development. Without the SANG, that can't happen. So this funding is very much ring fenced for that purpose. What Councillor Stribley refers to, and I completely agree that the budgets being available for parks maintenance will be very welcome, but they are different budgets. They are revenue budgets held within the service and corporately, and what we're applying for and asking here are capital funds for the delivery of the SANG.
Briefly, Chairman, I agree with the amount for the delivery SANG, but we're being told £100,000 a year on this one particular, inflation-proofed, £100,000 a year plus on this one area, which we don't seem to have anywhere else.
Thank you, Councillor Stribley. I mean, one of the cost drivers is clearly the dedicated ward ranger, the park ranger. One individual, the cost of employing one individual to a council is significant. But I have to say that, why is a full-time ranger required full-time to look after the SANG? Maybe you could just roll that question into the one that Councillor Stribley has just posed. Thank you. Mr. Whitchurch, please. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah. So the SANG ranger, we have a range of heathland mitigation funded posts that deliver heathland mitigation across our countryside sites, linked to the specific needs to protect our heathland nature reserves that have got the highest form of international nature designation on them and conservation on them. So we already have a number of posts funded this way through heathland mitigation and in other external funding. This post for the Hicks SANG is an extension of that use of those funds. That's agreed by Natural England. It's kind of trusted work with agreed as with planning colleagues who kind of effectively administer the funds. And replicates what Dorset Council do across their heathlands and their practices as well, linking in with their ownership. So it's also this post that we're requesting is also supporting other SANGs. So the recent, or opened a couple of years ago now, the Two Rivers Meet SANG in Christchurch, and other related heathland support, like the area Cherry Tree Nursery and the work at Kingfisher Barn at the Stour. All of those formed our service. And so this funding that has been asked for and requested here is actually supporting that bigger picture of kind of countryside management across a wider range of sites as well.
Thank you. I mean, it does, if there's already a team in place, the implication is from the funding allocated to this one SANG that the ranger is required as an additional post in order to look after the SANG. If the aim is to use that individual across the range of SANGs, then should it not be spelled out in the report? Because at the moment it does appear that this project is picking up the bill for one full-time employee who, the implication is clearly that his role is to look after that SANG full-time, and that appeared from what you've said it's not actually the case. So it does give a kind of misleading position on what the ongoing maintenance cost will be. Maybe it's significantly lower than the 100k if you share that cost amongst all the other SANGs that we have. I'll just pass on now to Councillor Slade. Thank you.
Thanks. I completely understand that when you have so first of all, I just want to say thank you to Nick Perrins for taking the time on a Sunday to come back and explain a lot of the finances to me. I found it really useful and above and beyond, so good for him and Adam as well, both explained why we need to spend nearly £9 million on the maintenance of this over its lifetime. But in terms of the Ranger, I have real concerns here that the paper isn't completely clear. I do understand that given the fact that you can take from the Heathland mitigation monies from developers to fund a Ranger, why wouldn't you? In the same way as, you know, you're funding posts from the Towns Fund and you're funding posts from Transformation. I totally understand why you would do that. So I don't challenge that at all. I do challenge the fact that the report isn't completely transparent about that. And I think it should be that this is not a Ranger dedicated to this park. And I think that would also allay the fears of local people. Having worked on this when it was openly being called a SANG, before it was tried to be disguised as a nature park, we know how heavily against this the people of Throop are. And if I lived in Throop and I thought you were going to have a park that required a full-time ranger, I would be thinking this is phase one of something much bigger, because the paper talks about the aspirations around the Hicks Farm urban farm that's been talked about for many years. And if I was the local resident, I would be thinking, aha, this is what they're doing. So I think in a way you can play down the fact that it's not just for this particular SANG, and reassure the residents, particularly as the highest risk element in this, which was initially a red, local negatively, and you're reducing it to a 4 by keeping them informed. So I'm just not completely convinced. What I'm struggling with a little bit is the £600,000 cost now, given that we already own the land, and given that £100,000 on things like, you know, signage and frames and stuff isn't eligible for the Natural England funding. What are we spending £600,000 on? Because I would have thought that letting something become rewilded is not a particularly expensive function. So thank you for the explanation of the 100,000, but I'm more worried about the 600,000 up front. I'm not clear on where that money is going.
Councillor Anderson?
I don't know if Martin would like to say on something on this. I don't think, and I don't think I mentioned anything about signs not being included. I mentioned about electric charging infrastructure, which is not
frameworks for signs, or something about them being wooden.
No, that's £5,000 for a height barrier, just so that the car park fits in with the conservation area of the Throop area.
It's
So
the 600,000 I'm interested in. I wonder whether as portfolio holder you've got that information, because I'd really like to hear from you.
and I'm going to ask my officers to answer you. Martin?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Mr. Whitchurch?
Thank you. Yeah, I can try and give a sort of an overview of the budget breakdown. So in broad categories, so car park and access, we're looking at about £130,000. The paths and surfacing required to get people around the open spaces around £165,000. We've got signage and interpretation around 20,000. There's some furniture costs, sort of benches, bollards, dog bins, and all that sort of thing. Again, up around £20,000. The ecological surveys, Councillor Anderson mentioned earlier, are up around 20,000. We've got things like planting. There's strong amount of planting in there, sort of trees and hedges, and recreating kind of old hedge lines and that sort of thing. That's close to £50,000. We've got quite a lot of fencing requirements. Different parts of the SANG will be grazed at different times on rotation. So that's over £60,000 as well. So the construction subtotal is around £400,000. There's a 10% contingency within that. There's other project fees within that in terms of survey costs and other things which get us to £2,000. We've then got additional costs around sort of project management and construction contingencies as well. So as a very brief overview, I appreciate the comments about rewilding the space. We do own the land. There are no sort of ownership issues on that front, but they are very rough fields, and being grazed extensively by horses for quite a period of time was to make them fit for the public and safe for the public. And that includes fencing the majority of the riverbank, because it's very steep on a fast-flowing section of the Stour as well. So, yeah, we've scoped out that budget as best we can in as much detail as we can. We're working closely with the TCF project that runs through the eastern end of the site to try and maximise any efficiencies from that work as well, if we can dovetail with their contractors as well. And obviously we'll be doing our best not only to deliver this on time, but also within budget as well. Now, anything we can bring it under, then obviously we will do. A bit of an overview.
Thank you for the breakdown. Again, going back to the paper that we had on the previous item, why is this not in the report? I mean, I don't understand why, if we're looking to use money through a council and you have a budget breakdown, with respect, Councillor Anderson, I would expect the portfolio holder to have that bit of paper in front of him and be able to read it in the same way that Mr. Whitchurch just did. But I do have serious concerns that we're asking, or Cabinet is being asked, because I realise we have absolutely no role here. There's a lot of, there's only 400,000 of 518,000 of seal plus 100, so 618,000. Only 400,000 is actually going on the project. 10% contingency, 40,000 of fees, and the rest of it is project management. That's a hell of a lot of project management and not feet on the ground stuff. So, although bearing in mind some of the other overspends, it wouldn't surprise me if we spend it, but I just find it hard. I don't understand why we had to ask that question, because to me that should have been an appendix listing it out so that we don't ask. And it should be fully available to the public. But thank you, Mr. Whitchurch, that's really helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Howell.
Yes, I'm just still a little bit confused about recommendation A3, because I thought it had been said by the portfolio holder or Martin that the £100,000 in that part 3 was coming from the heathland top slice, but then Martin said it was by and large coming from, by and large, but he was referring to the whole, all 3 items together. But I mean, my question essentially is I think it's quite important, and that's whether I support this or not, is that part 3 coming exclusively from heathland sill, or will it be taking sill away from, you know, the general fund and other projects that are possibly more deserving?
Councillor Anderson.
Chairman, it's only part 2 that isn't coming from heathland mitigation.
Okay, in that case, I'd like to make a recommendation a proposed recommendation that the Cabinet actually make an amendment to this, you know, that final resolution, which makes it clear that part 3 is coming from exclusively from heathland, because I think it would, you know, that kind of clarity is necessary, especially when people start looking back at these things and don't remember what the conversations around them were.
Any comment on that, Councillor Anderson?
Chairman, if it helps clarify, I'm quite happy to alter part 3 so it reflects the same as part 1, which says community infrastructure levy, heathland mitigation resources.
Satisfied with that, Councillor?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, okay. If you are happy to do that, Councillor Anderson, we'll just accept that that will happen.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Borthwick.
I have to declare an interest because I'm the ward councillor. But this has been going on a long time now, 2007. But I don't understand how you can talk about disabled people so strongly in a report and access and everything else, and you aren't supplying any sort of solar lighting down there, no toilets, and special needs as well. You keep talking about very strongly and a pathway will be all laid out properly. But to me, there's no real wording there supporting what you're asking. Talking about disabled people mainly, at the end of the day, there's no answer to it. So I'd like to hear a confirmation that there will be toilets there, because everywhere you go in in the council, it's difficult to find places that got toilets. I've got one at Muscat Park. We've just had a half-year thing. There's one child trying to go to the toilet, and his mother's had to put him behind the hedge for his main jobs, which is absolutely appalling. That you're not already opening enough toilets, and you've ignored them entirely in this report.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Porter. I would put that question, but the report specifically does say that toilets will not be provided. But the quality impact assessment also does discuss the issues around disabled access, which they accept will be limited, and they explain the reasons why in the report. So I'll put the question to Councillor Anderson and see what he's got to say. Thank you.
Chairman, the SANG requirements have no requirements for toilets, and it was not part of the planning permission either. That's why there's no comment about them. And I think you have already intimated on the comments about the other disabled access.
Councillor Porter, did you want to come back on that?
It's a very popular place to go now. The children have quite a few half-term events down there. So Hicks Farm is a very good park. It's not massive because you've got the river bordering one side and the residential the other side. It's not a massive park like other parks around. So it is really got a limited thing. And of course, parking, we are supplying extra parking there, but there will be a problem with parking, particularly the 12 weeks during the summer. The residents get quite hostile because they used to be able to park their cars, and all of a sudden they can't get even the same road. So I'm just saying it's not the biggest thing in the world, this side. It's not like the other. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Yeah, and of course, most of these issues were actually addressed at the planning stage, and that's why we got planning consent was granted. I don't think there's anything more that we can add to that. But I've got a couple of questions, if you don't mind. In the Equality Impact Assessment, it describes the public nature park being created out of pasture. Now, my understanding is that a huge section of it is actually water meadow and not pasture land. Is that correct?
Martin, do you want to? I thought they were the same, but I'll bow to Martin's expertise.
Yeah, I would probably say the same. I think they have a dual. They serve both sort of means really. Over years, in the summer it would all be used as pasture, or has been used for pasture for horses, but in the winter it all flood. So I think it probably has both. And in creating this, we are aware of the floodplain and the how prone to flooding it is.
Okay, Councillor Rail.
It's a really quick question, really. I'm always very disappointed that the SANG at Camford doesn't open a little bit later, particularly into the dark, because if you work like I do, then you can't go to it because it closes by the time it's dusk. This won't have lighting, but is the intention for it to be open in the evenings as well, particularly if there's going to be someone employed for the project, who I assume will probably be on hand to lock up? What sort of timings do you think it will be open for? Thanks.
Councillor Anderson.
I don't actually know the opening hours at the moment for it, but I don't know if Martin's got some times on those either.
There is, thank you, Councillor Anderson, Chair. There's a planning condition that states that we do actually have to close by a certain time, and I'm scrabbling my brains for what time that is, or trying to find the planning conditions to tell you that. I'm afraid I haven't got that directly to hand, but there is a planning condition that details that, and does request a specific time to close.
Pause with. Yeah, I was going to ask you to put your microphone on. That's all. But yeah, yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, is it correct then that the areas that are currently open all the time, and those areas which now will become part of the SANG, will those areas currently open all the time now no longer be available all of the time?
I think it's Martin.
So, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I should have clarified. Sorry, my previous comment related to the car park only. So it's the car park that has the planning condition on for closure on an evening, and the rest of the SANG will remain open for pedestrians, obviously, and for the cycle route, for the TCF route over the bridge at all times.
Thank you for that clarification. And Councillor, oh, sorry. Yeah, Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, it was just to say, Chairman, the reason we put that closing time on the car park was for antisocial behaviour going on. It's out of the way, it's in the back of nowhere, and the last thing you want is a load of yobby kids in their little jumped up Ford Fiestas racing around a car park at that time of night. So that's the reasons for that, no other reason.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, I just wanted to go over a couple of things really. I think I completely agree with the previous speaker's points on the financial stuff, so I'm not going to rehash all of that. The first one is really the rebranding that we've got here. So I just want to be 100% clear. The entire purpose of this whole project, of having the SANG in the first place, is to ensure that we can continue to build developments in the town centre. So this development of Throop Nature Park seems to me like quite a very transparent cover to make it seem like this project and the Winter Garden projects are not connected, but actually the Winter Garden project won't go ahead without this. So I don't think we're fooling anybody by trying to rename it here. And the second point I want to ask about is there's a line in the very bottom that says we will work constructively with the parish council to deliver the SANG. But from my interactions with that parish council, they're very much against this development. And there's no work in this project that I can see that sort of shows how we're going to tackle that. As I know, the parish council are not on board with this project. So how can we? What work are we going to do, and why isn't it in this report to say how we're going to engage more positively with that parish council? Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to answer that, Councillor Anderson?
I can answer by saying that I know that the officers have been having multiple conversations with members of the parish council, and they're in discussion. There's some of the items that have been discussed about changing the fencing types, things like that. And so we are, through the officers, having conversations with the parish council on this and working with them. And I believe some of the comments I've heard back from officers is that the parish council are softening, should we say, and I won't say more than that, their view on the SANG.
Thank you. Sorry.
So I guess what's the intent?
Sorry, you've lost me. Which undertaking was that?
Yeah, Councillor Anderson's one about the change in the wording of item 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Okay, just one last thing. The decision impact assessment with this, and I accept that it's an interim report. On the natural environment, one of the questions is, will it help protect and improve biodiversity, habitats or species included, designated and non-designated? And the answer is yes. Now, I find that a bit difficult to accept, given that there's a requirement to undergo studies on bird species, for example, to see if there's any negative impact on birds, that breed and exist in the area. So I'm not sure how, because the purpose of the ongoing study is to see if there are any negative impacts. So the answer is we don't actually know, and there may well be. And in fact, I do have some real concerns about the effect it will have on birds of prey who use the water meadows extensively for catching moles and that sort of thing. And so I'm not the impact assessment, there are one or two areas like that in there where I'm not quite sure that I can agree with the decisions that are stated in there. Nevertheless, that's just a comment I can make. I accept that the place has got planning consent, and it's going to go ahead. But I do think that we need to be really careful about the way this is handled, and particularly with the local community, given the huge opposition there was to it. So I just think we need to make sure that the questions in the decision impact assessment and also the comments made in the ecology impact assessment are actually reflective of what the real situation, even if it's difficult decisions and difficult things to say, I think they need to be said so we can show how they're being addressed to satisfy our community in that particular area. So members, if we haven't got anything else, yes, please. Yes, please.
If I may come back on the decision impact. I know I have been a member of the Heathlands Mitigation Executive in its original form since 2007. And I know one of the first things we did was we agreed to start collecting species data as part of that. I don't actually have any information as that because it's been done by the officers, but I am more than happy to pass over to Mr. Whitchurch, who I'm sure can give you further information. And I do believe that we've also been sharing that information with the Parish Council. So if I hand over to Mr. Whitchurch, he can give you some more information on that.
Yeah, I don't need to go into the detail of it, Councillor Anderson, because I'm aware that it's a condition of the planning consent that this is carried out over an extended period. Once the saying is actually in place, that particular element will be studied. So I don't really think I need any detail. I just raise it as a general sort of issue, concern about the answers that we're putting in the decision impact statement and also in the qualities impact assessment. So, unless there anything else from members, I think we. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Borthwick.
Over the last number of years, 2007, this idea came into being. We've had various surveys down there where people have been asked to, how do you think Hicks Farm has improved? And people are supporting it by about some 90%. This village council, unfortunately, have only just come into being, and everything is against what everybody else wants to do. Don't bring any cars around our road. So they're very anti. And also the fact is that with the surveys showing 90%, it tells me that it's locally supported. And when you go down there during the summer months, there was a lot of visitors who didn't even know anything about fruit, and are delighted that their children can actually get in contact with picking up worms and that type of thing. They've had a week down there this week where they've been quite busy. So it's not a little old thing, this one, and definitely it is an enjoyment for young children as well. So get around the fish pond they've got there and everything else. So it's a wonderful little thing, and I'd recommend it any day because I don't think it's ever going to do any harm because it's in a controlled area with all the water around it.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Borthwick. Okay, I think we'll bring that debate to an end now, members. Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson, for being here for that, and also thanks to Martin Woodchurch as well for your contribution. Much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, well, we can. I'm not sure. Given that it's got planning, it's going to go ahead. They're going to spend the money. We've queried the money. Yeah, Councillor Kelsey.
Thank you, Chairman. I think with what Councillor Howell had added in earlier, I'm quite happy to go ahead with the recommendations. Now they've explained the reasonings why.
Yeah.
I think as long as we have that clearly stated in the
Councillor Anderson said he would action.
Yeah, and as long as that's clearly done, then I'm happy with it, and I'd be quite happy to go along with the recommendations.
Yeah, but I take your point. I understand your point, but it's going to go ahead, and then a lot of people will enjoy it, I'm sure, as they do already. Thank you. So we'll move on then to agenda item 8, which is the seafront strategy update. And members will recall this was on the full plan. It's been delayed a couple of times now. And that paper will be coming forward at a point, I'm not quite sure exactly when, but sort of an interim measure, rather than just sort of left hanging, wondering what's going on. Councillor Iyengar has kindly agreed to give us an update, both on where the paper is, and also to give us a little overview of some of the themes that we can expect to see in it when we receive it. I specifically did ask Councillor Iyengar, not to give us a presentation, which he was willing to do, but I really, because of the timescales involved and the fact that we will be seeing this paper formally to scrutinise in due course, I didn't really want to take too much of this afternoon up, given that we have a fairly meaty issue to scrutinise following this agenda item. So with that, thank you for being here this afternoon, Councillor Iyengar. And it's good to see you. And I understand we've got Andrew Emery here this afternoon as well. Good afternoon to you too. So I'll hand over to you, Councillor Iyengar, and to receive your verbal update. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I'm aware it would have been ideal to have had the papers ready and a full discussion at today's meeting. With the Chairman's permission, with your permission, it's intended to come to the next meeting, time permitting. I move the Cabinet timescale on this from a scheduled March appearance to an April appearance, notwithstanding anything else that may come in, but it's scheduled to go in April, and then intended that it comes to ONS with the papers for a full review before we go to April's Cabinet. What's also happening is, you may well know, we've planned a councillors forum tomorrow, and we hope as many people as possible will be there, when we'll be able to lay out the stall and take feedback from members on where we've got to with all the work so far. And then, of course, then it will go into the process through to ONS and then through to Cabinet. The reason why I delayed it from March until April is because substantively a lot of the work in the detail had been done across the 18 character areas, and in terms of drawing in the consultation, feedback, and the synthesis of that feedback and determination of key priorities. What was missing from that was, if I say the narrative, it was the storyline at the top of it all to explain as simply as we can, this is what we've heard from people, this is what we already know so far, therefore what this means is this is what we shall be doing going forward, with an explanation of what should be happening first, what should be happening later, which things are more important, which things are less important, and giving at a high level the logic behind that story. And it is something which I hope members won't disagree with, which actually is quite difficult to put together, not least to keep it simple, but also to make sure it draws on all the important influences and key things that need to be in there. And that needed some reflection time, which I thought was a little bit too short in racing for March's Cabinet. So that's where we are with the paper. A full review at ONS coming up, with your permission, and an appearance at April's Cabinet. But the next day for us is the Councillors Forum tomorrow evening. I'll stop there, Chair, and if that's all right, I'm willing to take any questions procedurally on this. And also we've got Officer Andrew Emery here to support if you'd like him to say anything further. Thank you.
Okay, members.
Sorry, I may have missed something, but I don't think we've heard anything. All we've heard is that there's something tomorrow and it's coming to Cabinet, but I recognise we didn't have a presentation, but I thought we might hear something. Otherwise, there's no point in having this, really.
Okay, Councillor Iyengar, yeah, maybe you could just give us a little overview about some of the highlights in the report that will be coming forward.
I can certainly do that, Chair, but I will remind Chair with respect that I was asked only to actually give a message in exactly what I've just given, which is actually the process of where the papers are coming, and actually not to talk about the content, referring to our prior discussion. What the basics of the content are, we have from Hamworthy to Highcliffe, so the entirety of the seafront from west to east. The paper will show that that's being identified into what's called 18 character areas. The point being about the character areas is to recognise that each part of the seafront has not quite a unique character, but is different. So Bournemouth Pier approach is most certainly different to Muddyford, is different to the Poolkey area, is different to Hamworthy Park, for instance, and is different to Alum Chine. And what we tried to do in separating those areas out and drawing feedback from each of those areas is to understand what is it that people feel most strongly about in each of those areas. And what that's done is help identify what are the priorities for each of those areas and then across the whole seafront. And then what we've done is draw that together with literally how much money have we got in the budget, what projects are already on the stocks, and therefore, and also, what are some of the key priorities, thinking not least about environmental concerns, transport concerns, the general economic concerns about boosting tourism in the region, the influences of wanting to expand the shoulder periods of our seafront and not just have one great peak in the middle of the season, but how can we actually encourage tourism from both residents and from visitors to the shoulder periods and more evenly spread along the seafront? There's a whole load of details I can give verbally, but I'm aware that you don't have papers, Chair, for this meeting. So can I just get a little bit more from yourself as to how long you'd like this session to continue and how long you'd like me to talk for, albeit without papers?
Councillor Iyer, I'm aware you can talk for England if you want to.
Yeah.
But no, I thought you were going to, there obviously seems to be a misunderstanding here. I thought you were going to give us a verbal update without necessarily giving us a presentation. And that would include some of the key themes that were coming out in the paper. But I leave it up to members, actually, if there are any specific questions that you'd like to ask regarding what's likely to be happening within the seafront or the seafront areas. And you think this can, and Councillor Kelsey's put his finger up, so let's ask Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, it's not really a question, Chairman. It just seems that Councillor Iyer is here, was to give us a report, which we don't have. And I do feel a little bit sorry for him in some respects. He hasn't got a report ready for us. I'm glad that he hasn't brought a half-baked report to us, because that would have been worse than having no report at all. So I would like to confirm that tomorrow night's members' seminar is going ahead, because I think that will be the time for members to be doing questions and to be able to put their 2 pence worth in. I think this afternoon it's not worth it, because we don't know what he's saying. He doesn't know what we want to say. He has no papers in front of him. And like I said earlier, a half-baked report is far worse than having a report that's rubbish. So I'd rather we waited now until he has his report ready, and that we can all have a input tomorrow night at the members' seminar.
Yeah, I do agree that it's difficult to scrutinise a report when we don't have it in front of us. And the idea of asking Councillor Iyer here was, just to tell us what the status of the report was, which he's done. And I was kind of hoping we were going to get a précis of what we might be seeing tomorrow, just to give us some key themes. Yes.
So, Chairman, with respect, in our conversation prior to this meeting, I was not asked to come and give a précis of the content of the seafront strategy. If that had been the request, I would have come today prepared with my own crib sheets on. I was told distinctly not to come and talk about the content at the ONS today's meeting, but only to come and say this is what will be happening procedurally with the papers.
Okay, I think we clearly have a misunderstanding between us then.
Okay.
So yes. let's not argue about it. Members, if there aren't any questions for Councillor Iyer, I think we'll finish this topic. We'll look forward to seeing the presentation tomorrow evening, and we look forward to seeing the paper coming forward in due course. And incidentally, Councillor Iyer, I'm not sure we will actually have room on the agenda for the next one, but we'll have to look at it. I'll have to look at that with Councillor Slade because I know the agenda is already pretty full up for the next cycle. But anyway, we'll come back to you on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for coming. Yeah. Thanks. I'm sorry to have wasted your time, and you also,
Not at all.
Mr. Emery. Thank you for being here this afternoon. Thank
Okay.
you.
That's
Thank
fine.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, members, we're going to just have a 5-minute break if that's all right. Yeah. Are you with us, Hazel? Councillor Allen, are you with us?
I am.
Sorry, you missed my introduction, and the reason is I didn't have my microphone switched on, so it's my fault. So I spare the introduction again. Okay, what we're saying is we've got a public report, and there are annexes to it which are confidential, but the report, other than the annexes, are in the public domain. And if you could kindly introduce the public part of the report to us. Necessary, I will go into private session to discuss the options contained within the annexes, if that's what we want to do. So if I could ask you to introduce the report, please. Thank you.
Hello. Yes, thank you for asking me to speak on this report. We've been working towards having a homeless health and housing front door hub based in Bournemouth, but to work across the BCP conurbation with outreach into Christchurch and Poole, with a view to having a hub style approach to the care of people experiencing homelessness, those that are rough sleeping, but also those that are within emergency accommodation, supported accommodation, dealing with vulnerable individuals that have complex need, and working in a multidisciplinary, multi-agency approach to support these individuals to move away from homelessness and to become established in their own accommodation. So we have obviously already brought papers to Cabinet previously around purchasing St Stephen's Church Hall, which is on St Stephen's Road, and this is a church hall that's already being used to deliver homeless health and has been doing so for a number of years without any significant issues. But we were put in the position where we could purchase the building with a view to renovating it and making it more of a permanent health and housing hub and a base for the multidisciplinary team. And that's certainly how we would like to proceed. But what we are looking at in this paper is a number of options, and our preferred option is option 4, which is to partner with a community interest company, which we feel would be a highly efficient and ambitious option and would offer flexibility with moving this forward. It would allow us to partner with businesses and access grant funding and move at pace, because it's taken a long time to deliver this project, much longer than I would have hoped. And also we feel that under a community interest company, this would allow the hub provision to evolve.
Councillor Allen, sorry, can I interject? Sorry, but you've raised an issue which is contained only within the confidential annexes of the report. So I just wanted to mention that to you, because maybe you're saying something that is confidential at this point. Are you clear that you want to carry on with the brief?
Sorry, it's very difficult to know what is and isn't in the public domain, but the option is how that we move forward with this this scheme. So I think we possibly need to go to a private session if we're going to explore this any further.
Councillor Slade.
Sorry, Chair. I think my concern is the report clearly says there are options. It does not explain what the options are, and that would be confidential. I am slightly concerned, though, that the public should understand why there are options. That is not also in the paper. I just want to establish, if I looked at this paper as a member of the public, and notwithstanding what Councillor Allen has said, if I looked at this paper, I'd say, we were going to go ahead with this. Now there are options and it's private. I, as a member of the public, would say, what are you, why? And I'm really uncomfortable with going below the line, because the public need to know why we are making this decision. But even that is confidential. And I don't think that's right for a council to go below the line about why. I know why. Councillor, we all know why, but we're not allowed to say why. Can we clarify that? And then if we are going to talk about the detail, which of the options there might be, I agree we need to go below the line.
My view on this, members, is that we should go below the line, discuss freely what the options are, and then decide amongst ourselves what we then feel, in conjunction with officers' advice as to what we can and cannot say in the public domain. And we can have that debate at the end of the discussion that we've had. That would be my suggestion. And I'd like to ask members if they would be in agreement with that. I see everybody's nodding their heads. I've not seen it. Councillor Howard?
Yeah, although I agree with that approach, I think that a number of issues, the one that Councillor Slade raised about, you know, where is the line between confidential and not confidential, issues I raised with you at the weekend, that I think that the monitoring officer will helpfully be able to answer, but perhaps should be answered in public rather than in the private session.
Okay, well, in order that we can all engage in that debate, let's do that confidentially and then decide if we, as a board, want that issue to be out in the public domain.
No, but I think
so. We have an acceptance from the majority of the board here that we move into private session, and that's what I'm going to do now. Resolve that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act of 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the ground that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 in part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, and the public interest in withholding the information outweighs such interest in disclosing the information. So paragraph 3. Okay, so we will. Could I have a seconder for that proposal? Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. Agreed, members? Can I have a vote? Show of hands.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Can you all put your hands up again, please?
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Those against?
1, 2, 3.
3. Any abstaining? 1. Okay, so that move is carried. So we will now go into closed session. Stop the recording. Members of the public, welcome back to the meeting. We've had a very long debate and there's nothing further to add to that agenda item at this time. Agenda item 10, the forward plan. It was included in the agenda item. Has anybody got anything that they'd like to comment on about the forward plan? As I said, we have got a fairly detailed plan agenda in April. Things do change, and then the deputy chair and myself review it and alter it if necessary. But if anybody has no comment on that? Okay. Oh yeah, please. Yeah, Councillor Howe.
Yeah, on transformation, I worry. I see we've got a transformation update, and I worry that it's just going to be a similarly unhelpful kind of process in the same way as been before, because we struggle to get to grips with the detail and what transformation actually means in practice. And we get general assurances that everything's kind of okay, but a bit behind budget and a bit too expensive, but it'll be okay in the end. Which it may be, but we're asked to take it. I learned more about transformation from speaking to an officer on a social event at the weekend than I have done through the council, and it was because it was explained by reference to an example of particular processes that were going to be changed and how they were going to be changed and how it was going to work in practice. And I wonder whether we could adopt that kind of approach where we could ask for specific examples of how the processes are going to be changed to make things more efficient.
Thank you. Yeah, what I will say is that the council's website is fairly detailed on what transformation actually is, what constituent parts there are, and how it's organised in order to implement it. And there's some videos that go along with it as well. So actually, if you read all the material on there, it's actually quite revealing. But I think the real nitty-gritty of the issue now for transformation is that it's going to cost £67 million, and it's backloaded. The advantages that we're told, the £50 million savings, will not be achieved until the year 4 at the end of the programme. And I think we're all a bit unsighted about the reasons for that and what's really going on and what progress is really being made and how that process is being managed. Now, I would be very grateful if members here could put their thoughts on surrounding it to me before the meeting, in order that I can sort of get these issues teased out during that session. And it is one of the most difficult issues for the council at the moment, and it's one that we really got to spend some time with. And I agree with you 100%. We've got to understand, because I think one of the problems is that we don't understand what's really driving the costs, and we don't really understand if the savings that we're being promised are achievable. And it's, as we all know, it is basically the one contentious issue of the budget, which is driving the financial strategy for the council over the next few years, and which caused so much discussion at the recent full council meeting. So yeah, and that's why we really got to sort of start digging into what's going on. And I agree with you. We need a bit more detail. So I'd appreciate your help with this, members. So that when we have this transformation update, we get the most out of it. Thank you. So if no one further to add on the forward plan, yes, Councillor Edwards.
Can I just ask, because you've got some items outlined in the Cabinet Forward Plan without a date assigned,
yes,
and some of these seem to have been, well, ever since BCP was formed, to be honest, and they just keep being shoved back and back. I mean, the library strategy is one, and the pay and reward is another. I don't quite understand why some of these things are being shoved at the back. I would think, especially some of our officers, they must want to know how they stand with their terms and conditions of employment. And I just wondered if we had a date when some of these things are going to likely to be brought to Cabinet. The Western Gateway Subnational Transport Body, I think that's been on the plan for quite a long time.
Yeah, interestingly, the Cabinet Forward Plan does get amended pretty frequently. Sometimes it gets amended just before this meeting as well. And the very reason that you've mentioned is why we included those items on that list, because they are on the Cabinet Plan, but there are no dates allocated to it. And I'll show your concern that some of them keep moving to the right, and some of them are not insubstantial items, like the Capital Asset Management Plan, for example. It's a key paper, but we're not really seeing it, when it's likely to come before us. What I can do is try and find out in a bit more detail, but whether that information is available or not, I don't know. I think if there was a potential date when it's likely to go forward, it would be on the Cabinet Forward Plan. I just don't think they know at the moment, but I can ask the question to see if they do know, and maybe get some more detail in our own forward plan. But I have to say that we do this. We update our forward plan along the Cabinet Forward Plan. It aligns to it, and then we find that things change, and very often they change at the very, very last minute. It happens very frequently, and it's actually very difficult managing this forward plan for this board because of it. It did improve for a little while, a couple of months ago, and then it sort of went backwards a little bit. But yes, Councillor Howell.
Yeah, I might have missed it, but it seems one of the things that seems to have dropped off is what's happening to our leisure centres. Because we kept being told, oh, well, that is being delayed. There needs to be this big kind of reorganisation and thoughts about how we're going to deal with it in the future. But it seems not at all to be on there.
Yeah, it's not. And the reason for that was that the leisure centre management contracts were extended temporarily. And I asked if a paper was coming forward on this in the near to medium term, and the answer was no, it's not, because there's now sufficient time for them to start it at some point. But it's an issue that will come back, but that's why it's not on the plan, because there's no realistic forecast of when it's likely to come to us again. I mean, I think the Paul Leisure Centre contract was extended for 3 years or something, and the one at Christchurch by a year, and of course the BH Live contract's got probably another 10 or 11 years to run, something like that. So yeah, it is a thing that I know that it's being thought about, but there is no immediate prospect of the paper coming forward. That's why it's not there. Councillor Allison.
Thank you. Yeah, just a word of caution on that though. The paper was pushed back, and the reason that the leisure centres were renewed was because we didn't have the review completed in time, and actually it was the goal was to have completed it already, and the only reason that we've renewed the contract is because we didn't have the document completed. And I'd hate for us to get to the point where we have to do that again because the report's still not been worked on.
Thank you. I think I understand what you're saying. I think I will take an action to write to the portfolio holder to ask when they believe a paper may be coming forward on this issue. I think yeah. Thank you. So members, oh sorry, I beg your pardon, Councillor Devon.
Yes, I'm sorry, it's something in the far future, but I really hope that it can come to us. It's in the Cabinet forward plan for the 25th of May, and it's actually entitled Potential Transfer of Play Sites and Other BCP Assets to Christchurch Town Council. And there's a lot about it. It's got to go through the channels. I really would like ONS to look at it, because when Christchurch Borough Council set up Christchurch Town Council, all in a hurry, those were supposed to be transferred then. They couldn't be because they then belonged to BCP, and it's taken this long. And I'm a bit worried by the word potential. So can I hope that comes to us? I know it'll be probably in the forward plan then, but in case it does get pushed back.
Actually, it's coincident with an item that we have added to the forward plan for our meeting on the 16th of May, which talks about play in BCP, which is an all-embracing paper, which will include discussion on that issue, as far as I'm aware.
But targeted on that?
No, it will be not just that, because that's just one element of it. There was a much bigger issue about the play facilities across accommodation.
But my point is that they are not BCP play facilities. They are Christchurch. Anyway, never mind. I'll make my point later on when we get closer.
Okay,
Thank you, Chairman.
What I can do is make sure that that element of the paper is discussed in this section of the, as far as I'm able to anyway. Okay, yes, Leslie. Okay, members. Oh, Derek.
No, you won't get away with that. I understand these now. Council times, working till 11:30, 1:30. Can we talk to somebody who helps the officers go at a reasonable time? 1:30 in the morning for council meeting. It's got to be considered. Didn't mind me. I went home and watched the football afterwards.
Okay. All right, Councillor Derek, I will say that it's been raised at the meeting. I'll take an action to write to somebody, or Deborah Grant Services probably.
But somebody's got to talk about it.
And just to raise the issue with them. Councillor Strubley.
I do agree it's a ridiculous time to be out. We have other meetings during the day. We have planning committee during the day. We have overview and scrutiny during the day. Why can't council start perhaps at 2 o'clock and then it could go into the evening if it had to? Yeah, but I know people work, but nevertheless employers are required to give their employees up to 26 times a year off for for council work.
Not everyone.
Well, I appreciate that, but we do get also an allowance for being councillors. So I do think it needs consideration.
Okay, thanks. This is an argument that's often put forward, and we debate that. And if I was the chair of the planning committee, I'd be getting told off now for speaking at a time like that. But I won't. But I couldn't possibly do that to my colleague, Councillor Kelsey. So with that, I think we're going to close the meeting. Thanks. Thank you.